247 Mulberry Street, Little Italy. Today, it's a trendy men's clothing boutique called Descendant of Thieves. Tourists walk past the glass storefront, browsing designer jackets and Italian leather shoes. The original tiled floors remain. So does the tin ceiling. But nobody shopping there knows what those tiles witnessed. This was the Ravenite Social Club. For 66 years, from 1926 to 1992, this was where the Gambino crime family ruled New York. Albert Anastasia held court here. Carlo Gambino renamed it after Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven. And John Gotti, the Dapper Don himself, used an apartment upstairs to plot murders while FBI agents listened through hidden microphones. The wiretaps caught everything. Gotti discussing the Castellano hit, planning new rackets, trash-talking his underboss Sammy the Bull. Those recordings sent him to prison for life. He died there in 2002, throat cancer claiming him at 61. Today, shoppers try on $1,000 coats in the exact spot where mob bosses once sentenced men to death. This is the story of 9 New York Mafia social clubs, places where millions in illegal cash changed hands, where murder contracts were signed, where the commission settled territorial disputes and family wars. Some are churches now, some are bubble tea shops. One's a Jewish community center, but walk through their doors, look at the floors beneath your feet, and you're standing where the American Mafia built its empire. Let's start where the bodies piled highest. 4021, Flatlands Avenue, Brooklyn, the Gemini Lounge. In the 1970s and 80s, this corner bar looked like any working-class neighborhood joint. Blue-collar guys, college students, off-duty cops. A jukebox played the hustle. Young couples danced on Saturday nights. The owner, Roy DeMeo, seemed like a successful local businessman. Roy DeMeo was a Gambino soldier who ran one of the most prolific murder crews in Mafia history. The FBI estimates his crew killed between 75 and 200 people. Most of them died right here, in the apartment behind the bar. The method became infamous. They'd lure victims through a side door into the back apartment. DeMeo would shoot them in the head with a silenced pistol, immediately wrapping a towel around the wound. Another crew member would stab the victim in the heart. This stopped blood flow because the human heart has its own electrical system that continues pumping briefly after brain death. Less blood meant less mess. Then came the dismemberment. They'd drain the body in the bathtub, wrap it in plastic, cut it into pieces, and stuff it into cardboard boxes. The boxes went to Fountain Avenue landfill in Brooklyn. Tons of garbage got dumped there daily, making body discovery nearly impossible. Investigators who wanted to excavate abandoned the plan when they calculated the cost and futility. The crew called it the Gemini Method. Anthony Center and Joseph Tester, known as the Gemini twins, perfected the technique. They always worked together, always sat together at the bar. And they were the most ruthless killers in a crew full of psychopaths. One victim was Frank Amato, married to Constance Castellano, daughter of Gambino boss Paul Castellano. Amato beat and cheated on her. The DeMeo crew made him disappear. His body ended up in the ocean, not the landfill. Contract killer Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman, worked with DeMeo. He once used the bathroom at the Gemini and pulled back the shower curtain. A corpse hung over the tub, draining. Kuklinski casually went back to dinner. In January 1983, DeMeo's own crew turned on him. They found his body in the trunk of a Cadillac, shot execution style. By 1982, the FBI had connected over 100 missing persons to the Gemini Lounge. The investigation was closing in. The Gambino family decided DeMeo had become a liability. Today, the building at 4021 Flatlands Avenue is Purpose Life Church. Congregants worship where dozens of men were murdered and dismembered. The facade looks almost identical to the 1980s. But the souls seeking redemption inside have no idea what sins soaked into those floorboards. Move to Manhattan, 247 Mulberry Street. The Ravenite. In 1926, it opened as the Knights of Alto Social Club. Lucky Luciano was a regular. In the 1950s, Carlo Gambino purchased it, renamed it the Ravenite, and installed Aniello Della Croce as underboss. Della Croce lived across the street and used the club as his headquarters. When Gambino died in 1976, Paul Castellano became boss. But Della Croce controlled the blue-collar soldiers. A split threatened to tear the family apart. Castellano represented white-collar crime. Della Croce represented the old ways. Street crime, violence, loyalty through fear. John Gotti sided with Della Croce. When Della Croce died in December 1985, Gotti made his move. On December 16, 1985, hitmen gunned down Paul Castellano outside Sparks Steakhouse in Midtown. Gotti watched from a car nearby. Within days, he became boss of the Gambino family. Gotti transformed the Ravenite into his throne room. He bricked up the facade, removed the windows, made it look like a fortress. Every Wednesday night, he summoned capos and associates. FBI surveillance cameras photographed everyone entering and leaving, building an organizational chart of the family. But Gotti made a fatal mistake. He used apartment 10 on the 3rd floor for sensitive conversations. The apartment belonged to the widow of Michael Cirelli, a deceased Gambino associate. Gotti thought it was safe. The FBI bugged it. For months, agents recorded Gotti discussing murders, rackets, and family business. The tapes captured him trash-talking Sammy Gravano, his underboss. When Gravano heard those recordings during trial preparation, he flipped. His testimony, combined with the wiretap evidence, destroyed Gotti. In April 1992, Gotti was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and racketeering. He got life without parole. The Ravenite closed in 1997. Today, it's a men's clothing store. Tourists shop where the Teflon Don once ruled America's most powerful crime family. Now Queens, 100 First Avenue, Ozone Park. The Bergin Hunt and Fish Club. Despite the name, nobody hunted or fished there. It was Gambino headquarters from the 1960s until 2005. 2 brick storefronts, internally connected. Carmine Charlie Wagons. Fatico opened it in the 1970s, naming it after Bergin Street in Brooklyn, where his crew originated. The misspelled name stuck. Fatico picked Ozone Park for its proximity to JFK Airport. His crew specialized in hijacking freight. When Fatico went to prison for stealing fur coats in 1977, John Gotti took over. He'd been inducted as a made man and promoted to capo. The Bergin became his kingdom. Gotti kept an office in the back, with a closet full of custom suits and a barber chair for daily trims. He ran loan sharking, extortion, gambling, and theft operations. And he endeared himself to the neighborhood with an annual 4th of July barbecue and fireworks show that became legendary. Every 4th of July, Gotti closed 4 blocks around the club. Barricades went up. The crew provided food, drinks, and a massive fireworks display. Neighbors loved it. Local kids idolized Gotti. When police tried to stop the tradition in 1988, residents complained. The community saw Gotti as a benefactor who kept the neighborhood safe and graffiti-free. That loyalty protected him. Neighbors would alert the crew whenever they spotted undercover detectives. The community became Gotti's early warning system. In 1985, Gotti orchestrated Castellano's murder and moved his base to the Ravenite in Manhattan. But the Bergin remained active under his brother Peter Gotti. When John died in 2002, mourners lined the sidewalk outside the club with flowers and candles. His funeral procession drove past, and locals saluted. The Gambinos abandoned the Bergin in 2005. Today, it's split into 2 businesses, a Christian church and a bubble tea shop. Crime in Ozone Park has dropped dramatically since the 90s. The neighborhood is safer without the mob, But older residents still remember when the Dapper Don ruled from behind those brick walls. Brooklyn again, 7506 13th Avenue, Wimpy Boys Social Club. This was a Colombo family stronghold. In the 1980s and 90s, this nondescript storefront served as headquarters for Gregory Scarpa Sr., one of the most dangerous men in New York organized crime. Scarpa wasn't just a killer. He was an FBI informant who fed information to his handler while simultaneously carrying out hits for the family. During the Third Colombo War in the early 1990s, Scarpa orchestrated multiple murders from Wimpy Boys. He'd receive intelligence from his FBI handler about rival faction locations, then send hit teams. The FBI later faced massive scandal when it emerged that they'd enabled a mass murderer. Scarpa died of AIDS in 1994 while serving time for racketeering. Wimpy Boys lost its importance. Today, the location is a private residence. No plaque marks its bloody history. Manhattan, 208 Sullivan Street, Triangle Civic Improvement Association. This was a Genovese family club in Greenwich Village. For decades, it served as a neighborhood social club where made men discussed business over espresso. The Genovese family, considered the most powerful and secretive of the five families, used Triangle for low-level meetings and collections. Unlike flashy clubs run by Gotti or DeMeo, Triangle maintained a low profile. The Genovese way: don't draw attention, don't make headlines, operate in shadows. That's why the Genovese survived when other families crumbled. Triangle closed in the 2000s. Today, it's a residential building. The storefront has been converted into apartments. You'd never know it was once mob headquarters. East Harlem, 416 East 115th Street, Palmer Boys Social Club. This was the Genovese family's East Harlem headquarters. In the 1920s through 50s, this neighborhood was dominated by Italian organized crime. Future boss Vito Genovese got his start here. The Palmer Boys represented old-school neighborhood control, protection rackets, gambling, loan sharking, all run from a storefront social club. By the 70s and 80s, East Harlem was changing. The Italian community dispersed. The club's importance faded. Today, it's been demolished or converted. The exact location is hard to pinpoint because so much of the neighborhood has been redeveloped. Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, 205 18th Avenue, Tarly's Bar. This was another Gambino location. In the 70s and 80s, Tarly's served as a meeting spot for Gambino soldiers operating in southern Brooklyn. Bensonhurst was mob territory. Multiple families had presence, but the Gambinos dominated. Tarly's wasn't as famous as the Ravenite or Bergin, but it served the same function, a place where wise guys could meet, discuss business, and collect payments without drawing attention. The neighborhood accepted it as normal. Everyone knew who ran things. Today, Tarly's is gone. The location has been redeveloped. Brooklyn's gentrification erased most physical traces of its mob past. Williamsburg, Brooklyn, 420 Graham Avenue. The Motion Lounge. This was owned by Bonanno capo Dominic Sonny Black Napolitano, and it's where one of the FBI's greatest undercover operations nearly ended in disaster. In the late 1970s, FBI agent Joseph Pistone infiltrated the Bonanno family under the name Donnie Brasco. He spent 6 years undercover, getting so deep that the family prepared to make him a made man. Napolitano sponsored him. The Motion Lounge was where Pistone spent countless hours building his cover. In 1981, the FBI pulled Pistone out. His testimony led to over 200 indictments. The Bonanno family was decimated, and Sonny Black Napolitano paid the price. In August 1981, Napolitano was summoned to a meeting. He knew what was coming. He gave his jewelry to his crew and told them to split his belongings. Then he went to the meeting. His body was found with both hands severed, a mafia message that he'd shook hands with the devil. The Motion Lounge closed shortly after. Today, the building houses residential apartments. The Williamsburg neighborhood has transformed from working-class Italian to hipster central. Artisan coffee shops replaced mob social clubs. Finally, South Ozone Park, Queens. 114-45 Lefferts Boulevard, Roberts Lounge. This was a Lucchese family hangout made famous by the movie Goodfellas. Jimmy Burke, played by Robert De Niro in the film, used Roberts Lounge as his base. Henry Hill, the film's protagonist played by Ray Liotta, hung out here with Tommy DeSimone and other Lucchese associates. In December 1978, Burke's crew pulled off the Lufthansa heist at JFK Airport. They stole $5 million in cash and nearly $1 million in jewelry. It remains one of the largest cash robberies in American history. Burke ran the operation from Roberts Lounge, but the heist became a bloodbath. Fearing that crew members would talk, Burke systematically murdered everyone involved. Bodies started turning up all over Queens and Brooklyn. Witnesses disappeared. The paranoia was justified. The heat was intense. Henry Hill eventually cooperated with authorities. His testimony, combined with evidence from the Lufthansa investigation, helped convict dozens of Lucchese members. Burke died in prison in 1996, serving time for murder. Roberts Lounge closed in the 1980s. For years, the building sat abandoned, a ghostly reminder of Goodfellas and the Lufthansa heist. Today, it's been demolished. A new building stands in its place. But true crime tourists still visit Lefferts Boulevard, looking for the spot where Jimmy Burke planned the score that destroyed his crew. These 9 locations tell the story of the American Mafia's rise and fall. In their prime, these clubs generated millions in illegal profits. They employed hundreds of criminals. They controlled neighborhoods through fear and loyalty. Cops knew they existed but couldn't shut them down. Political connections ran too deep. What changed? RICO prosecutions in the 80s and 90s. The Federal Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act gave prosecutors unprecedented power. They could indict entire organizations, convict bosses for ordering crimes even if they never pulled a trigger, seize assets, flip witnesses with immunity deals. The surveillance technology improved. Bugs got smaller, wiretaps got better. The FBI learned how the families operated and targeted their social clubs. The Ravenite bugs that caught Gotti, the Motion Lounge surveillance that protected Donnie Brasco, the Bergin investigations that mapped the Gambino hierarchy, and the neighborhoods changed. Gentrification swept through Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. Italian-American communities that once sheltered the mob dispersed. The cultural omerta, the code of silence, weakened. Younger generations didn't romanticize organized crime. They saw it for what it was: violence, exploitation, destruction. Today, you can walk past most of these locations and see no trace of their history. The Gemini Lounge is a church. The Ravenite is a clothing store. The Bergin is a bubble tea shop and a church. Roberts Lounge is gone entirely. But the buildings that remain carry ghosts. Stand outside 247 Mulberry Street and imagine John Gotti emerging in a custom suit, surrounded by soldiers. Picture FBI vans across the street, cameras rolling. Visualize the moment when agents burst through the door with arrest warrants, ending 66 years of Gambino control. Walk to 4021 Flatlands Avenue. Look at the Purpose Life Church. Know that between 75 and 200 people were murdered inside, dismembered, disposed of like garbage, and nobody was ever charged for most of those killings. Drive through Ozone Park to 98-04, 100 First Avenue. See the bubble tea shop. Remember when John Gotti threw 4th of July parties that shut down 4 blocks? When the neighborhood loved him because he kept them safe, even though his safety came through violence and intimidation. These clubs were the mafia's heart. Take them away, and the families couldn't function. no place to meet, no place to discuss business, no place to maintain the illusion of legitimate social organizations. The FBI understood this. That's why they targeted clubs with surveillance. That's why RICO prosecutions focused on proving these weren't just social clubs, but criminal headquarters. That's why shutting them down was essential to breaking the families. In 2025, the American Mafia is a shadow of its former power. The 5 families still exist, made men still operate. But they're careful now, paranoid. They know every phone might be tapped, every meeting might be surveilled, every associate might be wearing a wire. The social clubs are gone, the neighborhood support is gone, the political protection is gone, the cultural acceptance is gone. What remains are stories. The Gemini Method, the Lufthansa heist, Donnie Brasco's infiltration, Gotti's wiretapped arrogance, Castellano's murder, the Colombo Wars, the bodies, the blood, the billions in illegal profits, and buildings. Ordinary buildings in ordinary neighborhoods where extraordinary crimes occurred. A church where a murder factory operated, a clothing store where bosses sentenced men to death, a bubble tea shop where America's most powerful gangster ruled. Walk past them. Look at them. Know their history. Because forgetting is what allows history to repeat. These clubs represented institutional evil, organized, systematic, profitable evil. They weren't romantic. They weren't glamorous. They were businesses built on violence, fear, and exploitation. Today, they're churches and shops and apartments. But their stories remain. 9 social clubs that tell the story of the American Mafia, from power to paranoia, from neighborhood protection to federal prosecution, from social clubs to shopping destinations. The mob wanted to be invisible, to operate in shadows, to appear legitimate while committing crimes. For decades, it worked. But eventually, the law caught up, the neighborhoods changed, the surveillance improved, and the social clubs that once protected them became their downfall. If you found this story fascinating, hit subscribe. We drop a new mob documentary every week. Drop a comment. Which of these 9 clubs would you want to visit? And did we miss any notorious New York Mafia social clubs? Let us know below.